Welcome to Destiny Youth Development Center Incorporated. We are here to have a conversation with Dr. Natasha Clark Stewart, who is from Dallas, Texas. I am Gita Littlejohn, and I am the owner and program director of Destiny Youth Development Center Incorporated. So I'm so happy and excited that Natasha's here. I have my board members here with me, which is Letitia Broomfield and Aisha Carter. So let's get started. I'm gonna have Letitia do our, just talk to you guys about our mission, what we're about, and also talk to you about what our long-term vision is.
Okay, so Destiny Youth Development Center is an organization with a mission to prepare and support youth age 12 to 19 that they can successfully and meaningfully transition to adulthood. We provide them with social emotional support, music and arts programs, mental health awareness, special ed support for parents that have children with autism spectrum disorders as well. The vision of this organization is to establish a physical youth center in the Northeast and cities in the Northeast and the Southeast where they may lack programs and special ed services for youth and families.
Thank you, Tisha. So that's our mission and our vision. Like she said, our long-term goal is to establish centers in the Northeast. So I do have particular areas that I would like to do that. One, of course, is Worcester, Southbridge, Durham, North Carolina, and Century, Florida. So please stick with us, continue to watch our Facebook. You can also go on destinyyouthdevelopment.com where we update our website on a regular basis. We're also on Instagram and also on Twitter. So with that being said, oh yes, I would like to acknowledge one of our other board members, which is Ernie Floyd, who is not with us today because he has his own organization that he is working on and he is not available, but I wanted to acknowledge him as well. So I am going to introduce our speaker, which I am very excited about. I've known Natasha for the majority of my life. We went to the same church together, House of Prayer number 5 in Brockton, Mass. Natasha has been a big inspiration to me. And as I said to her this morning, made a huge impact on my life. Just a very, very sweet individual and just very knowledgeable about many things. I believe that she was the best person to come on to talk about mental health and the stigma that is attached to mental health. So I am going to read her bio and then she will have the floor after that. Natasha Clark currently serves as the director for the Center for Counseling and Behavioral Health at the Potter's House of Dallas under the leadership of Bishop T.D.
Good morning.
Natasha is an inspirational speaker, advisor, and life coach, mentoring the masses through television, social media, one-on-one consultations, and conferences. Natasha's passion, transparency, and authenticity has afforded her the amazing opportunity to work with professional athletes and sports teams, politicians, and governmental agencies, faith-based entities, as well as the nation's top universities and colleges. Integrity, confidentiality, and the ability to connect with people in a judgment-free atmosphere has kept her in the profession for over 20 years. Natasha has received multiple degrees, her PhD, her master's, and a bachelor's, numerous state, national, and local licensures, certifications, and professional credentialing to stay cutting edge and well-versed in her chosen field of study. Most recently, Natasha was awarded the Presidential Volunteer of the Year Award 2019 along with being honored at the United Nations and granted an official Pin of Honor for her work in the field of mental health. Natasha considers herself a lifelong learner and is inspired to share what life has taught her about the power of inner healing, hope, and new beginnings. Two of Natasha's greatest blessings are her grown children, Kiana and Anthony Stewart. In her spare time, Natasha enjoys traveling, reading, and taking on new adventures. I am so happy to introduce our speaker for the mental health awareness conversation, Dr. Natasha Stewart.
Good afternoon. I am so excited to be here. I just can't tell you what a blessing this is, because as somebody who grew up in Worcester and traveled throughout the greater Boston area, to know that mental health services and a plan for the youth is in place there. So when she said Worcester, I was like, yay, Worcester. Because I graduated from high school in Worcester, and I know firsthand that there are not a lot of services, and also people of color. There are not a lot of people of color that look like us in the profession. So I applaud you and the organization for branching out and for fulfilling this mandate, excuse me, and this call. And so I'm grateful to be here and just to have a dialogue and just to talk today about mental health. And a lot of times when you start talking about mental health, people get a little skittish, people get a little nervous because they don't know what mental health is, because all they've heard about mental health is what's portrayed in movies or on television or in the news. When somebody goes and shoots up something, then they say, oh, that person was bipolar, or that person was schizophrenic, or things of that nature. And so it's always a very stigmatizing and negative sense of the word mental health. So people don't just jump in the conversation or want to be exposed to it, or God forbid, to say they or a family member, a loved one, a child, a niece, a nephew might be struggling with their mental health. So today I am so excited to talk about it and to hopefully reduce the stigma surrounding mental health, and to let everybody in on a huge secret that seems to go unnoticed, that we all have mental health. Every single one of us on this planet have mental health, just like we have physical health. All of us have physical health, and we look at our physical health. All of us are on a spectrum with our physical health. Some of us, if you asked us to go run a mile today, this morning, some of us could go do that. I'm in the category of, wait a minute, honey, I can't go do that. Can I walk real fast, but I can't run. But we all have physical health. And when we talk about physical health, we don't always talk about physical health in negative connotations. When we talk about physical health and we say, oh, we're going to join a gym, or there are people going to gyms, not everybody in the gym has cancer, right? Not everybody in the gym has high blood pressure or some other physical problem. But why is it when we talk about mental health, it's always negative? We all have mental health, but we all do not have a mental illness. There's a difference between mental health, how you relate to the world around you, and a mental illness. Just like there's a difference between having physical health and having cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, or things of that nature. So we have to reduce the stigma, because we all have mental health and we're all responsible for taking care of our mental health. Just like we take care of our physical health. Just because I'm trying to eat a balanced diet and get 8 hours of sleep doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's preventative care, right? Same thing with mental health. We have to take care of ourselves. And the earlier you start talking about mental health, so I'm glad we're focusing with youth this morning, the earlier you start making it okay to talk about mental health and your emotions, the easier it is as you progress in life to deal with things that may be triggering. And right now, collectively, as and I would say a nation, but as the world, we have suffered a collective trauma with this pandemic, with COVID-19. It shut us down in our tracks. It didn't matter if you were in Texas, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts. It didn't matter where you were feeling the effects of this COVID-19. And in the beginning, we really didn't know a lot about it. So if you were already struggling with your mental health, having this come could trigger or increase your symptoms, okay? And if adults were having a hard time to place this and deal with this, how much more do children, our adolescents, our youth have a hard time dealing with what is happening, our new normal, having to wear masks, having to shelter in place, not have more gatherings than 10 people, schools shut down, social distancing, all the things that we had to contend with. And as adults, it was hard for us. And sometimes we don't allow it to be hard for children. We don't make space for children to experience things, especially when I was growing up, children were to be seen and not heard. We didn't have a voice. And I think sometimes that still carries on, that, you know, kids are supposed to be seen and not heard, and the adults will make the best decisions. And we don't empower our kids and give them a voice. And we don't really listen to them. And a lot of times what happens is we discount when kids tell us something is wrong. You know, when they say, I don't feel good. Oh, you're all right. Come on in here. You're going to school. Or, you know, I'm scared of that. Well, you have nothing to be afraid of. And we don't really give them voice to their feelings. And we usually relegate feelings to either sad, happy, or mad. There are more feelings than sad, happy, and mad. Okay. And we need to allow our kids to experience those and talk about those, you know. And so I'm grateful for this platform. And I should have said this in the beginning, I'm an interactive speaker. And I know we're going to have a time when I'm done for a Q&A. So if you have questions, or if I'm saying something and you're like, wait a minute, clarify that. I don't mind you jumping in and us having a dialogue, okay? Because it's no good for me to be here and I leave you with more questions than I do answers. So if you have a question, or you're wondering about something I'm not covering, then by all means, please feel free to jump in and let's talk about it, okay? So let's talk about what are some warning signs with kids. And this may be surprising to some and maybe not, but the disorder or condition that is most prevalent in kids is anxiety. A lot of people think it's depression because we hear a lot about depression, but it really is anxiety. That is the number one disorder for kids between the ages of 12 and 17. And really now studies that have come out over the last couple of years, and that's the thing with statistics and studies, they always kind of change every couple of years, the more you study and find out about things. But right now they're saying anxiety in kids can start even as early as 5 years old, okay? But let's think about it. And let's think about anxiety, what that looks like, what that feels like, you know? I used to work in an emergency room. I used to do psych consults in an emergency room to see if somebody needed to be transferred to the psych unit in the hospital, or if it was something else. So if a doctor, the ER doctor, had somebody that presented and they felt like something wasn't right, it wasn't necessarily a medical condition, I would be called, I'd come over and I would assess the patient and find out, is there something psychological going on, or is it something else? And one of the things that I would get all the time is people coming in, and when they presented at the hospital, they said it was for a heart attack. They were having heart palpitations, they were tingling, sweating, shortness of breath, and they would really think they were having a heart attack. And so, of course, when you go to the ER and you say that, you're going to get priority treatment. They're going to rush you in. They're going to start hooking you up to machines. And what happens is then they realize you're not having a heart attack. You're not in any cardiac distress. And what you're really having is a panic attack. A panic attack can really mimic a heart attack. It has all the signs of it, but the thing with the panic attack, usually within 10 to 15 minutes, you start coming down. A heart attack, you're not going to do that. And so people were really having panic attacks. And usually we think of that for just adults, but think about kids and the anxiety. And I know there are a lot of educators on the line. Think about going to school and having to get up in school. And what is the thing that a lot of teachers do, and I know this was true for when I grew up, is when you came back from summer break, you had to get up and tell what you did for summer break. And what if you're a kid that didn't do anything for summer breaks? So you have the kid next to you saying, oh, my family went to Disney World and we went to grandma's and we did all this fun, exciting stuff. And I'm the kid who was in a food desert, didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I'm happy school is here because I know at least I'm going to get to eat lunch and breakfast. What if I'm the kid that going to grandma's house was a traumatic experience because there was somebody at grandma's house that wasn't treating me right? What if I'm the one who moved around constantly and I'm the new kid, and now is this pressure to get up and tell people that they're expected to have a wonderful experience, and I don't have that. I don't have that. So a lot of situations just in school can create anxiety. Also, one of the things that teach, and once again, this is not a knock against teachers, because when we follow rules and traditions, and sometimes it's not always in the best interest. And so it's not that we're intentionally trying to inflict harm. Sometimes we didn't know. And once again, we don't listen a lot of times to kids. Another thing that when I go to schools and classrooms, I say, let kids pick their own seating. And let that be that they have to work for it. So if they pick to sit next to their friend, it's okay. But if they're talking to their friend in class, then they have to move. And I say, I do that because when I was growing up, one of the anxious things was where you were going to sit in class. And usually they assigned it by your name. And my last name at the time was Clark. So I always got stuck in the front of the class, and getting stuck in the front of the class that I had no control over. Everybody was like, she's the nerd. Well, the teacher assigned seating. I didn't get to pick where I sat. And that was always kind of stressful for me. And I would love it when I got to a classroom where I didn't have to have an assigned seat, or I got to sit in the back because my last name was C. I always had to sit in front. So all those kind of things can be stress inducers or triggers for kids, just simple little things, because now you're in a new environment, you're in a classroom, and of course you gravitate to your friends. Any of us that go anywhere, when we get to go sit down, where do we go? We go where we're comfortable. We sit with our friend, with our peer group, okay? And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can use that for your advantage and now say you're going to work to keep your seat. And if this is where you want to sit, then I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to show you some self-control skills to keep you in your seat, rather than introduce anxiety to you by either sitting you where somewhere you don't know the people, or you're sitting next to somebody you don't get along with, or you're sitting in the back and you really would like to sit in the front, or you're vice versa. All of those things can be stress for our kiddos, okay? But so those are kind of specific situations, but let me just talk in some general terms. And I am one that I like research and stats. So I'm going to share some of that with you. And this is coming from CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It says 3.2 million adolescents aged 12 to 17 in the United States has had at least one major depressive disorder episode or anxiety. 3.2 million. Now, this is what we know. Those are just from the ones that report. How many don't report? So that number is probably way higher than 3.2 million, especially in communities of color. We do not go to the doctor. We especially do not go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? So that number is probably higher than that, especially in communities of color. We don't talk about mental health, and we sometimes, especially if you're in a faith community, don't necessarily agree with mental health. You just think everything is under Jesus, and he'll take it to the cross in prayer, and that's it. And that, I struggled with that. I grew up in church, like Miss Littlejohn said, we met at church. She was like my little sister at church. And so it was a struggle for me when I started getting into psychology, because my peer group was like, no, you believe the Bible. I do believe the Bible, and I do believe in God, and I can have Jesus and a therapist. It is no competition. So when you look at communities of color, historically and culturally, we always went to the church first, whatever the problem was. And a lot of times the church, well-meaning, but they didn't deal with it. They didn't deal with mental health. And I think about the movie Soul Food, and we probably all saw that movie Soul Food, and they had that uncle that was up in the bedroom that nobody saw the whole movie, and they kind of slid the tray of food to him. And then at the end, he saved everybody because he had all the money. And that's kind of how in communities of color is we treated people with disorders. So is it no wonder our kids who grow up seeing this don't feel brave enough or supported enough to say, hey, I have anxiety, or they don't even know what word to put to it. Just, I don't feel right. I may have an upset stomach. So a lot of times kids don't report the clinical definition, anxiety or depression. They just might say, I'm really tired. And they went to bed on time, or my stomach hurts. Or with kids, a lot of times depression comes out as anger. Because once again, you remember I said sad, mad, and glad, that those are usually the only categories that we allow kids to express in. And so sometimes depression and anxiety can come out as anger or irritability. They're snapping, and it's really not that they're angry or upset, but there's stuff going on with them that they cannot put a voice to. And if you don't have the people around you saying, okay, let's have some emotional intelligence going on here, you don't know. And I remember growing up, I didn't know, about feelings and emotions, and it was okay to talk to somebody, and it was okay to not be okay. Especially once again, growing up in the church, I thought if I wasn't always happy, if I wasn't always up, then something was wrong with me. And so I never considered that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay for grief when you lose somebody. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to have all the whole range of emotions that we have. So some signs of depressions in kids would be a loss of interest in activities. And once again, you have to be careful, because a lot of times once we hear stuff, then we'll start looking at it. I remember I bought my daughter, when she went to college, I told her if she got a scholarship, if I didn't have to pay tuition, I'd buy her a car. Lo and behold, she got a scholarship. So I had to what? Buy her a car. So I bought her the summer before she left, I bought her a Nissan Altima. And prior to that, and she got to pick the car she wanted, and she picked a Nissan Altima. Prior to that, I did not see Nissan Altimas. I didn't recognize them. As soon as I bought her that black Nissan Altima, what happened? I started seeing them everywhere. So I'm driving, I'm like, what is Kiana doing over here? She's supposed to be, oh, that ain't her. And I'd go. And literally one time I was at Target, and I went up to her thinking it was her car. It wasn't her car. And I was like, where did all these black Nissan Altimas come from? Why didn't I ever see them? It's because now I was aware of them. So now they were on my radar. So sometimes when we hear stuff, we're going to start trying to diagnose everybody we meet. I don't want you to do that, okay? Because some stuff is just normal teenage years. Let's think back, and for some of us, it's a long journey back. Think back to when we were 12 and 17 and all the stuff. So some stuff is just normal teenage development. And I use this thing like, because I say somebody might lose interest in activities. That could be a warning sign. Well, I use this example, my son, or not my son, my daughter. I remember when we would all go to the mall, and that would be cool. Me, her, and my son would go to the mall, do whatever, hang out, go to the food court. And I remember one Friday night, she said, "Hey, Mom, can I go to the mall?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And so what I heard was, "Can we go to the mall?" Because that had been our routine. I said, "Yes, we'll go tomorrow." Got up, got ready to go to the mall. I'm, getting my stuff together. She comes down and she says, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "To the mall." And she was like, "With who?" "With you." You asked. And she just got like aghast, like, "Oh my God, I didn't want to go to the mall with you and hang out with you and AJ." She was like, "I meant, can I go to the mall with my friend?" And I was like, "Well, when did this change happen?" And she was about 13. And so she lost interest in hanging out with Mom, but she didn't lose interest in going out. So you have to, when I say lose interest in stuff, don't make it just a broad stroke. "Oh, they don't want to do soccer." For my son, he switched. I had him in soccer. I don't know why I like soccer, but when he got older, he was like, "I don't want to do soccer anymore." He wanted to do football. Now, my concern would have been if he didn't want to do anything at all. If he just said, "I just want to stay in my room and I just want to stay on video games," then I would be concerned. Or if my daughter just said, "I don't want to go to the mall, I just want to, stay in the house," or she was moping around. So a lot of stuff is just normal teenage stuff where they shift interest, or hobbies or activities they did when they were little, as they are getting older and a little more autonomous, they don't want to do anymore. So don't say that's depression. Don't say that's anxiety. Some of that is just normal teenage stuff. Now, if they stop doing anything and they don't swap out the activities, then that might be a warning flag, okay? But just because they change interest or stop having interest doesn't necessarily mean they have depression or anxiety. Another thing is irritability, okay? And we all know teenagers, especially teenage girls, because we're dealing with hormonal issues, they have mood swings. But if you notice, okay, they are extremely irritable, more than what is reasonably expected, and over small stuff. They're snapping, or they're angry, or they're crying, and you say, "Why are you crying?" And they can't explain why they're crying or why they're upset. So once again, I don't want you to just take these. I want you to investigate a little more and ask questions. And a lot of times as parents or caregivers, we don't ask questions because we really don't want to know the answer, because then we feel stuck, like, I don't know what to do. But that's why this organization is great, because they can give you resources and tips and where to go when you have a teenager that you're not sure what the next steps are. Okay. They also can have like a drop in grades or attendance in school. Suddenly they're making up reasons why they don't want to go to school. And a couple of years ago, bullying came out as really a huge thing. And a lot of kids didn't want to go to school because of bullying. And that is a real thing. And I know it was around when I was growing up, we had bullies, okay? But now bullying has taken on a whole, it's like bullying 3.0, because I knew at school I had a bully, and I knew once I left school, I was going to have to see that bully again. But now with social media, bullying is 24/7 because of social media. And we all know kids are glued to their phones or to their tablets, to different things. And so now bullying is not confined to a building or a space. it can be 24/7. And if we look at some of the cases of kids as young as 8 years old committing suicide, it was bullying. So when a kid is suddenly wanting to avoid a class, avoid school, or avoid certain things, you have to start asking questions and not say, oh, you're just being sensitive, get over it, I had a bully. You really need to start asking questions and paying attention, because when we have an 8-year-old, yes, ma'am, were you
And
raising?
Natasha, we have a question in the chat that states, what can we look for with changes in behavior? So what changes in behavior should we look for during COVID, since kids can't be as social with the social distancing and not being at school and so many activities being canceled? So this person wants to know what we should look for as changes in behavior during the pandemic.
That is a great question, because this has shifted so much for us. And first of all, you need to be age appropriate with your kids and have conversations, because they have lost stuff. That just socialization, just being able to go to school, see their friends, go to the park, go to the movies, just different things. They have lost that, and they need a space to grieve that. And a lot of times as adults, we don't think kids grieve. We think kids are resilient, and they are, but they also need a safe space. And so just initiating conversation. How does this make you feel? And us not filling in the blank. Okay. Because usually when we ask the question, we answer it. We'll say to a kid, oh, how does this make you feel? You're pretty sad, huh? Well, we answered the question, so we have to give space for them to answer and not suppose what that is or interject what that is. And you have to come up with creative ways to replace the things that they lost. And one of them is just like the Zoom. Hey, I know you can't be with your friends in person, but hey, how about getting on a Zoom call with them? How about doing different things? So you really need to look during the pandemic is them totally shutting down and not having interest in anything. Because I know my two, when this first came out, they had to come home from college. And I mean, I couldn't get on my Wi-Fi between them two because they were connecting with everybody via social media. Now, I would have been concerned if they were just isolating in their room. They're not talking to anybody. They're not relating to anybody. And I was really concerned about single people during the pandemic that lived alone, because if you're sheltering in place, we need human connection. We need attachment. And I talk about 3 things that this pandemic did for us that impacted us that we need to be aware of. So when you're talking about kids, I would talk about their connection. Who and what are they connecting to? And if they don't have any connection, you need to ask why. And was this something that I didn't realize that was going on before the pandemic, but the pandemic made it a little more crystal clear that they're not connecting? Also, we need to talk about their competence. How are they handling the pandemic? How are they adjusting? Do they have unspoken fears? Because once again, a lot of times unintentionally, we shut down our kids. We don't give them a voice. And we say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And we don't let them express. So we need to talk about their connection. We need to talk about their, I just lost my train of thought. Their connection, their competence, their ability to handle what is going on. Once again, age appropriateness. Then we need to talk about control, because in this pandemic, one of the things that we all lost was control. We could not control. We got sheltered in place. People were telling us, you can't leave your house. And if you leave your house, you got to put on a mask, you got to do the social distancing. So there are 3 areas: our connectedness, our competence, and our control. So if as adults, we're struggling with that, how much more are our kiddos? And so we have to probably take the initiative and ask them. And once again, don't use that language. Well, how are you handling your control issues during this pandemic? No. Just you asking them, how do you feel safe right now? How do you feel about not being able to see your friends? What would you like to change right now? that's areas of control. And of course, there's some things we can change and there's some things we can't change. But at least having the conversation and creating a safe space for your kids to talk about it, then it leaves something. One of the best things, and this is why I'm a proponent for therapy, is talking about stuff changes a lot. And people say, what does therapy do? When you can talk about it and get out your own head and your own ideas, because this is what we do as humans. We fill in the blank. We do not like to know. Just just think about a secret. Somebody says, oh, I have a secret. You immediately want to say, I want to know, what is it? Tell me, right? Our brains, just the way we're wired as humans, we don't like gaps. We don't like missing information. So usually, especially as kids, we fill that gap with misinformation. And that's why I say you need to talk to your kids age appropriately, right? But so you're not going to talk to your 8-year-old like you're going to talk to your 17-year-old, right? There's going to be different words and different contexts that you use, but it's the same conversation because they can fill in with misinformation. And kids are egocentric, meaning the world revolves around them. When you ask a kid, why did you do this? You weren't thinking about anybody else. They're not. They're egocentric. They think about them, and that's for the good and the bad. So you can have kids thinking about, did I do something? If somebody got sick in my family, was it because of me? Is it I'm a bad person? All those kind of things. So if you don't start talking about it and filling in the gaps, then you can have kiddos with misinformation and acting out because they think they're a bad person and not that this is just a bad situation. Make sense? Did that answer your question? I don't know. Put in the comments if that answered your question. So, okay.
She said yes.
Okay. So,
Natasha, can I just ask you something?
Yes.
Just going back to the anxiety, and you said a key thing, which I say all the time too, like parents, oh, they're all right, they're fine, you know, they'll be okay, really brushing things off. How can, because I know adults, we can have anxiety about certain things too, but what if you have an anxious adult or adults in the home and you have anxious kids? Like how, like, I know they need help, but what does that look like? What can the family do if you have an anxious parent and then you have an anxious daughter or son? So they're both dealing with anxiety. Like
and some of this can be learned behavior because kids are sponges. And if you have a parent or a caregiver that is anxious, that can be picked up by that child. Because you're scared of everything. And I'll use this example. I don't have an anxiety disorder, but when this COVID-19 hit, I got very anxious because all of a sudden people are dying, things are shutting down. Both my kids were at school. Now, let me put it in context. My daughter is, she's 24, soon to be 25. My son is 21. They both have their own apartments. They have their cars. They live their lives, okay? But when COVID hit, I said, oh, y'all coming home because I don't know what's going on. And she's in Houston, he's in Oklahoma, and I'm in Dallas. So I was like, y'all coming home. I don't want to hear it. I just get in your cars and come home. And I realized my anxiety was making them anxious because they were fine. They're like, okay, COVID is going on. Okay, we're going to follow the recommendations, wear a mask, social distance. And in my mind, I was like, I can't keep you safe unless you're in my house. And they ended up both came home, but it was because of my anxiety. And my daughter said, Mom, you're stressing me out more than COVID-19 is stressing me out. You scaring me more than that is. And I was like, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me reel it in. Let me manage my emotions. And a lot of times as parents, we expect our kids to have the same urgency or the same intensity that we have about certain subjects. And I was like, they're cool with this. They are like, okay, COVID-19. And I'm the one panicking. So I can't put off my worries and my fears and expect them to hold that. It's not for them to hold. So however they are coping with this, I need to allow them to cope with that. And I don't need to say, well, haven't you seen the news? Don't you know how many people are dying? We don't know how you catching it. So I'm just reiterating all my fears onto them but want them to be okay. How insane is that, right? I keep putting fear on them, but I want them, don't be afraid, right? So as adults, we have to be responsible for our own emotional wellness. And we can't expect our children to handle it or manage it for us. Okay. We can't adultify our children and expect them to manage our emotions. So if you are an anxious adult, you need to own that and not relay that to your kids and not make your kids fearful, because then they will pick up that behavior and they will say, okay. And they may have some anxiety, and anxiety is a normal emotion. It's when it gets out of balance, when it becomes a problem, because you should be anxious. Like if you're expecting, a job and you're a little anxious, or if you have to do some public speaking, you might feel a little anxious. So anxiousness and anxiety all by itself is not bad. It's when it goes to extremes, when it keeps you from living your best life, when it keeps you stuck in the cycle of worry or fear or anxiousness, or you won't go out, you won't try new things, or you're telling other people, why are you doing this, and da 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 da. So all of us have anxious moments. So just because you have an anxious moment doesn't mean you have an anxiety disorder. It's when you can't control it and when it's your life. And so once again, with kids, if we begin to listen to them early on, and once again, kids don't have the emotional intelligence to say, this is anxiety. They're going to say, my stomach is upset. When I have to go to school in the morning, I just don't feel good, or I have a headache. They're going to talk about more physical symptoms than emotional symptoms. And when I teach a class, I talk about breaking it down. What are some psychological or emotional symptoms? What are physical symptoms? Okay. And how do we talk about that? And even as adults will go to the doctor and they'll be suffering from depression, but they don't say depression. They'll say, I just can't sleep, or I'm overeating, or I'm sleeping too much. And it's like, okay, and the doctor checks them out. There's nothing physically going wrong. Maybe it's depression, And so we don't tap into our emotions and our feelings. And when you just have overwhelming sadness, I'm sad and I don't know why I'm sad. Or I have kids, a lack of motivation. And a lot of times we'll say, you're just being lazy, get up. And they're just really don't have the energy, lack of motivation. And it's not laziness. It may be depression or anxiety. And depression or anxiety can co-occur. And usually they do. They if you have anxiety, you may have some depression, or vice versa. And so we need to really be careful and listen, because if this is a kid that every day is having a stomach ache, okay, this is not a stomach ache anymore. If this is a kid who's shying away from activities all the time, okay, it's not just a shy kid. Maybe there's something more going on, and that's where we have to dig and where we have to start asking some questions. And this is the thing, some of this stuff can be hereditary. So if you know you have anxiety or depression, or it's in your family, then you certainly need to be looking for it in your kids. Excuse me.
This is good.
Any other questions?
So I just have another one. I'm not trying to ask all the questions here, but
please.
But so the depression, and you said a few things about that, like the signs, like, they're tired, they don't want to wake up, they're not motivated, so would that be considered, if they are struggling, if a young person, a youth, a young adult is struggling with depression, and parents don't understand the signs or symptoms, like how do they get help? Like how, because the child or the youth, they don't know, they just know that I'm just not motivated, I'm tired. But how do they, or how does the parent help them if they don't know that, okay, maybe I should go get my child seen? I mean, does that come from them taking them to a regular doctor, and the regular doctor or primary care says, you know what, I think they need some therapy? Like, how would they get the ball rolling? Because this, I mean, it's a problem if the child, is not motivated, they're tired, they're not changing their clothes, they don't want to shower, they have hopelessness, they're feeling
Exactly.
hopeless about things, so like, how do they get the ball rolling?
And that's a good question. And this is the thing, primary care physician is a good place to start. Also, your school, your child's school is a good place to start. Most schools have a counselor, and they can make referrals. And a lot of times with schools, there are low cost options for people who have no insurance or are underinsured to get resources. So I would start with my child's school, talk to the guidance counselor, or if they have a counselor on staff, say, hey, I'm noticing my child is not wanting to bathe, not wanting to get up, failing in their schoolwork, peer group has changed or non-existent, all these kind of things. So just start. And also another resource is community agencies. I know in Dallas, we can call 211 from any phone. And I don't know if you guys have that, like 411 is for information. We have 211 where we can dial and give our zip code, and it'll tell us all the agencies in our area that can provide services. So I say, either if you don't have a primary care physician, you can go to an emergency room. You can start with your child's school, see what resources and things are available through the school and school district, especially if your child has a learning difference. By law, they're required to help you. So just different things like that. And also talk. A lot of times there's shame and there's stigma, and we don't want anybody to know what's going on in our house. I grew up, what happens in this house stays in this house, right? We need to break that, especially in communities of color. Yeah, we need to talk about it, because I guarantee you, look at the stats, 1 in 5 people, right? So that means possibly 2 people right here on this call have struggled, okay? So if we start talking about it or know somebody who's struggling, we'll find out we're more alike than we are different. And if something helped you, then please share that resource with me. So this stuff like this, forums like this, Facebook. I also tell people all the time, Google is your best friend. Put in symptoms, signs, put in where you can go, and it will come up. You'll be surprised how many, you'll have pages that you can scroll through. Okay. So there are resources and help out there for you, and you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to be embarrassed.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So in my next question, like I said, I'm not trying to take over the floor, those that are on the call. Like, you guys can ask Natasha questions. I just want to know, how can educators, teachers, youth workers, youth counselors, how can they help the students? I mean, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and how can they help the kids that are in their class if they see, like, okay, Johnny's not participating, or he's coming to school acting a certain way, and instead of having a judgment mentality, like, okay, maybe I need to pull the parents aside. Like, how can educators, because again, I mean, you have a PhD in this, but everybody doesn't understand like what mental health is. And you said that in the beginning, there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. So how do educators recognize the signs with kids in their classrooms?
And this is why I encourage educators, because once again, the numbers don't lie. You're going to have at some time in your career, kids in your classroom that are struggling with depression or anxiety. And so first thing I'd say to educators, you don't have to get a degree in it. You don't have to get but I would say have some basic knowledge of mental health, depression, and anxiety. And the most thing, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And I don't have to have a PhD to show care and concern.
Yeah.
and not make it embarrassing for the kid. I remember growing up, the teacher would clown kids, and now I look back and wonder, was that kid really struggling with depression or anxiety? They would have their head on the desk, they'd be sitting in the back of the classroom. And I remember in particular, there's one young girl that was in my classroom, and she didn't come in, her hygiene was bad. She would always go sit in the back, and she would always just put her head on the desk, and she would pull her coat up. And the teacher never was sympathetic to that. She just wrote her off as a bad student and would clown her and just kind of say, oh, I guess you don't have your homework, or I guess you're not participating today. And I thought, what if that teacher had went to her privately and said, what's going on? Because you could clearly see, we all could clearly see, she wasn't kept. She didn't have any friends, and she didn't participate in class. We all knew that. But I can never remember anybody reaching out to help her. So instead of making this person, putting them on Front Street, I think as an educator, we need to take that extra step and ask those questions. Are you okay? What's going on? How can I help you? And sometimes we thrust help upon people, and sometimes we just need to say, what do you want from me? How can I help you? Instead of thrusting ourselves in, ask for an invitation, because once again, I want to know that you care, and I'm not just, you're not just doing this out of obligation, and I'm not going to end up with CPS, at my door. So I think as educators, we have to be aware of the signs and the symptoms of depression and anxiety, and then we have to have the right approach when we're trying to intervene. I think approach is everything. And once again, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to solve the problem in a day. But I think building a relationship and getting that child to trust you, and then suggesting, hey, can we talk to your parents about this, or your caregiver, or da 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 da, find out what's going on. Because if you build relationship, the relationship is going to last. I'm in college. I have my PhD today because a fourth grade teacher told me I could. She told me, Natasha, you're smart, you should go to college. And I was like, what's college? What's that? And she believed in me. And I went home and I told my mom, and I said, hey, this teacher said I could go to college, and that they pay people to go to college. Can I do that? And, and just this teacher laying out a blueprint for me changed the course of my life. So I believe educators, a lot of times you spend more time with that child than their own parent or caregiver spends with that child. So definitely be aware of signs and symptoms, and know that you are a protective factor. And I like to talk about protective factors because we talk about the signs and symptoms, but protective factors in children's lives are important. And one protective factor is having at least one adult in their life they can talk to. That is a protective factor. Also being engaged in activities, whether that's music, art, sports, that's a protective factor. How many times have we heard athletes get on TV and say, if it wasn't for basketball or it wasn't for football, I would have been doing this or I've been doing that. All those kind of things are protective factors. Having a routine. And this is why in COVID-19, it was so, when I was doing trainings and stuff virtually, I was telling people, as well as adults, maintain a routine. Get up, comb your hair, brush your teeth, put some makeup on, put some, if you wear makeup, put your clothes on. Don't half dress for Zoom. It was things going around on the internet where you just would put on a shirt for Zoom and, be in pajama bottoms. I'd say still do a routine. Routines help us. It makes us feel comfortable. It makes us feel safe. And, we get in a routine. They're negative routines of not getting dressed, not eating right. I was a victim when COVID-19 first came and everything shut down. I was like, oh, okay, this is just like a little vacation. And I was in the sweats and I was just eating bad. And Natasha gained 25 pounds. And I was like, oh my God, and I was like, what happened? I left my routine. So I'm up here telling people I need to get in the routine. I got back in my routine. And if I was to stand up right now, I'm fully dressed. I got makeup on. I got earrings on. I don't have my watch on. I was about to say I got my watch on, but I got my necklace. Look, I got my necklace on. You know, I'm getting dressed like I would go to work, or if I was going out to do a presentation, I'm getting dressed. Doing a routine helps us. Those are protective factors. And if they help us as adults, studies show having routines for kids makes all the difference. So keeping a routine, having predictable bedtimes, predictable get up times, just because they're on COVID, you know, you letting them sleep to 2 in the afternoon. No, you're not sleeping all day. This having routines, and kids are going to give you the pushback. Oh, why do we got to do that? But in the long run, they appreciate it, and kids need structure. And providing that structure, and I'm not saying rigid, don't be inflexible, but providing structure helps. All of those things are protective factors that go a long way.
We have a question from Crystal. Well, she said two things. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so Crystal, okay. So I'm trying to get to my questions here. Hold on a minute. Okay, so it says, how do we help those types who don't want to leave the house or engage?
That's hard. So my son, you know, growing up in a house with his sister who's older and myself, 2 females, you know, we would always find something to do. And I would, you know, when he was younger, he didn't have a choice. He just went with me. But as he got older, he was like, skip that. And then I became concerned because I was like, well, you don't go out. When I was growing up, we played outside until the street lights came on. But now he's connecting with everybody over social media and video games. And so it was very hard for me to get him out the house. And I was just like, and so, but then when he became like a junior in high school, all of a sudden his social life just blew up. So I didn't know if he was just a late bloomer or if it just was me and his sister he don't want to hang out with. I didn't know, but I would always introduce stuff, even stuff that I didn't necessarily like, to get him out the house and get him engaged. So I always made sure he played sports, and he would give pushback. But I was like, you have to have some type of activity. And this is the thing, as a minor, you have a voice, but you're not the final voice. Okay, I'm going to empower you to have a voice, but when I know this is good for your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health, you're going to do this. And so for my kids, they didn't have a choice. You tell me which activity you want to involve. Now, I didn't pick the activity. I let them pick the activity, but you're going to have one activity that you do that connects you to a group of people, teaches you life skills, how to be a part of a team. And I also made them volunteer, which helped because their school also had a requirement for volunteer hours. So all those type of things that you can do, and I'm sorry, hold on one second. All those things are good for you to do. And once again, you're going to get pushback, but each and every time at the end of the day, my son was like, I enjoyed that. I had fun. And sometimes they don't want to go out their comfort zone. And once again, you have to think you're teaching your child to be prepared for the world. They're not going to get to be isolated from the world. And they don't always get to do things that just are fun for them. You're part of a family unit. If the family is going out to do something, then you need to participate in the family unit. And also finding things they like. So if that person has something they're like, I can't tell you how many, I don't play video games, but that's something he likes. So if I had to go out and go to conventions for gaming and the characters, I did it. Why? Because I wanted him to be engaged. So sometimes as parents, we have to get out our own comfort zone and do stuff. Same thing with my daughter, you know, she was all into the social media and these girls on social media who know how to do makeup and all this stuff. And they would come to Dallas and she's like, oh, mama, they're coming to Dallas. I didn't want to go see the Cheetah Girls. But what did I do? I went and saw the Cheetah Girls, right? Because once again, I'm trying to do stuff that they want to do. Now, my thing was I'd go to church. Now, I'd make them go to church, but that wasn't the only thing I allowed them to do. I said, you're going to go to church on Sunday. As long as you live in my house, you're going to go to church on Sundays. But I also, what do you want to do? And I'm going to participate in those things that you want to do. So sometimes we get stuck that I'm the adult and you're only going to do what I want to do. I think you have to have some fairness and some balance on both ends. That makes sense?
Yes, ma'am. Crystal, did that answer your question, my dear? I'm assuming that it did.
Yeah, and it's hard. I'm not going to say it's easy. It is hard to get them to be engaging, but that's when okay, my alarm is going off. Hold on one second. That's when you start asking the questions. What do you like to do? What would you like to do this Saturday? What would you like to do this week? What activity at school would you like to get involved in? And give them a voice. And they may not even, I remember a parent said their son wanted to start playing football. He was a senior, and they're like, why did he wait till his senior year to say? And I said, but it doesn't matter that he waited this long. Now he finally showed some interest. And I said, it doesn't matter if he makes the team or not. Support him. Take him to the tryouts. Find a neighborhood one, even if he can't play for the school. There are neighborhood leagues that just as long as you sign up, you're going to play. I said, just encourage him. And that may not have been your choice for him. That was his choice. And he's made it. So let's do that.
Okay, she says she's trying to help a family, and that answer, it helped her.
Okay.
She
cool.
also mentioned, Crystal also mentioned in the chat, hold on, let me get it. About working with the family, or she's trying to tutor a child having issues and he won't come out of his room when she goes to his house. Parents are waiting for therapeutic support. So, like, what does she do in that instant with the child? Because I experienced that too when I was doing in-home therapy. Kid didn't want to participate, or just wanted to stay in the room.
You went on mute. You're on mute. We can't hear you. There you go. You unmuted now. We lost you you experienced that too when you were doing in-home therapy.
Yes, I was doing in-home therapy, and a lot of times the kids didn't want to engage, or they wanted to stay in the room, or they wanted to stay in a certain part of the house. It's like, how do you get the child, or how would Crystal get the child to engage if they're in their room? Like, what would she do?
And this is the thing, and I don't know the bounds of your profession or organization that you're working for, but when I have resistant kids, I have to remember the kid probably did not initiate this. The kid probably did not go and say, hey, I want a tutor to come to my house and help me, and it could be some embarrassment or shame that I need a tutor. So we don't know what's going on with that kid. So I keep that in mind. And once again, I don't take anything personal. And so what I would do is, because obviously if he's in his room, that's his safe space, I would ask permission. Can I come in your room and we can leave the door open? Can I come in your room? And I wouldn't jump right into tutoring with him. I would ask him some questions. Is it okay for me to be here? Would you like me to be here? Would you like me to explain why I'm here? And, because a lot of times, once again, we talk about kids, but we don't talk to kids. So the kid only overhears what's happening to him, and so then they develop their own opinion because they fill in that blank. And you're the enemy. You're coming here because you're reinforcing that I'm dumb. No, I'm not here because of that. So before you even meet the kid has imagined in his mind, you're the enemy. So is there no reason? There's no wonder he's resistant to meeting with you. So I would break all that down and make sure we have a connection. Do you understand why I'm here? Do you understand how I can help? Do you want the help? You know, once again, when we say having, empowering them to have a voice, we really have to empower them, and ask those questions and not take it offensive. I remember one time a young man, you know, the mom called the counseling center and said the kid was getting kicked out of school and she had to get him in to see somebody as soon as possible. And he was having anger issues. And I have a staff of 8, but this particular time I was the only one available. So I said, well, yeah, bring him in. I'll see him. And kid came in my office, plopped down in my chair, arms folded. And he was like, I don't want to be here. And I said, oh, okay. I said, that's fine. I said, you don't have to be here. And he just looked at me. And I said, that's fine. I said, you have the right to feel that way. He's like, well, I didn't want to talk to you today. And I said, you know what? You weren't on my schedule either. You know, so I guess we're both in the same boat. You know, I was like, I promise you, I didn't have you on my schedule. I said, your mom called and said you need to be here. I didn't initiate this. I said, so I'm with you. I said, the door works both ways. I said, so you're free to leave. And he was just looking at me and he was like, so I could get up and go? I said, yeah. I said, you can get up and go. I said, I'm not going to keep you here. And if you don't want to talk to me, then I don't want to talk to you. I said, that's fine. That's okay. I said, I promise you I have a lot of work to do today. And he just kept looking, but he didn't move. And so I was like, well, I said, do you want some time to think about whether you want to talk to me or not? And he was like, I don't know. I said, okay, so let me tell you my understanding of why you're here. And I said, my understanding is you're going to get suspended from school if you don't talk to somebody, and you've been having some anger issues. I said, is that your version? Is that why you understand you're here? And so we began to talk. And so the kid ended up talking to me, but I couldn't come in and force him. I'm not going to force you to talk to me. That's not therapeutic. That's not helpful. I want you to talk to me because you understand on your level that there's some value in talking to me. Because once you see it's some value, then it's easier. That's why I say, where is this kid in the process? Obviously, the kid probably didn't schedule the tutoring, didn't ask for the tutoring, may have some shame or fear or anxiety about the tutoring or his performance in school. So all those things are connected. So maybe getting down to the common denominator and saying, hey, how do you want me to help you? Do you want me to help you? Can I help you? I don't know. And I won't know unless we talk. So can we at least have a conversation? And you're not committing to anything. I'm not committing to anything. We're just trying to figure out if this is a good connection, you know? And also I would look around the room to kind of see what he's into, what stands out to you. And maybe, you know, form a bond. If he plays video games. Oh, what's your favorite game? Wasn't there a learning curve for your game? Because if you're a high scorer now in the game, you didn't start off that way. You had to learn all the secret codes and all of this and all of that. So I would try to connect to him in a different way other than just the tutoring. And you'll be surprised. And it works with adults too. I had a elderly patient who had to transition from living on her own to living with her family members, and her doctor suggested her getting into counseling. And this woman was like, I want to say she was like 83. She was like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I've been living my life. I just want to go home. She didn't talk to me. And I was going to the house to talk to her. And then her daughter had told me she likes sitting outside. So first time totally shut me down. Second time I went in, I said, can we sit outside? I said, it's such a beautiful day out. I said, let's just sit outside. So did she want to talk to me? No. But did she want to go sit outside? Yes. So we went and sat on the back porch, and I didn't say nothing to her. And we just sat in 2 rocking chairs and rocked and drank some tea and went back in the house. And I said, okay, I'll see you. I said, can I come back next week? And she said, yeah, come on back. I told her daughter, I said, we're just developing a relationship. I said, it's going to take time. She's 83. I said, I can't jump into how do you feel living with your family? How do you feel losing your independence? I said, she don't know me from a can of paint, and she's old school. You don't tell people your business. I said, so we have to have some type of relationship. And I promise you, for about a month, all I did was go sit and rock on the back porch with her and drink tea. And then she told me all the tea, honey, too much tea. But anyway.
Thank you, ladies. I'll say that is very helpful, because that's what I've been trying to do with this young man. The first day, mom was trying to force the door open and have him come out of the room, and I'm like, no, just let him be. You can't do that. That's going to push him further away.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Any other questions, my friends that are on the call? Anybody else have anything they want to ask Natasha? No? Okay. Well, we thank you, Natasha. That was a wealth of information.
Definitely, thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Very helpful. We thank you so much. And I just, what I learned today, and which is probably something I should have known, but I didn't, there's a difference between mental health and mental illness. That is like stuck in my brain now. There is a difference between mental health and mental illness, and just giving us the advice and admonishing us to really develop a relationship, develop a positive rapport with kids, your client, your students, whoever you may be working with, kids that you may come in contact with, and not just, okay, how you feeling? What's going on? Tell me what, like, develop a relationship with them first, which is always key. So thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you are a busy woman, but I appreciate you for taking the time out to come and just come on Zoom and talk to us about mental health awareness and taking the stigma from it. Because I was, I grew up the same way as you grew up in church, oh, pray about it, talk to Jesus, and that's it, which you can, because that makes the difference. But if you need help, go get help. If you need some counseling, some therapy, go get it. I don't think God's going to punish you for doing that. I really don't. Because you're talking to someone that doesn't know you, to help you understand, what's really going on with you, help you to understand family dynamics and all the other stuff. But yeah, I think, get the help that you need. So I appreciate you for that. Anything else, people? You sure you don't want to ask Natasha anything before we move on? Because we're closing soon. I'm giving you the chance. No, nobody? Okay, well, thank you for joining Destiny Youth Development Center Incorporated. I just want to highlight two things for educators and parents. And if you have your child that has not signed up for a summer camp, or, we have our summer session and our fall session that's going to be starting June 4th. We will be at the YWCA. So check out our website. All the information is there on how to enroll your child. It's only $10. It's a $10 donation. And if you don't have it, just let us know so we know how to work around that. So again, starts June 4th. We're going to be doing some social skills group, teaching social skills, how to make friends, how to keep friends, how to have a conversation, etc. And also we're going to have teen talk for the teenagers, ages 13 to 19. So please sign up. Deadline is May 15th. So please, you can contact us, as I said, via website, and all the information is there. The last thing that I want to say, this is another important workshop for the youth and parents, which is going to be on October 16th at 12 o'clock, again at the YWCA. It's the signs and symptoms of abuse. And the workshop facilitator is going to be Amelia Shannon. She is a licensed psychotherapist. So please keep those dates in mind. It's all on our website. It's all on our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. and all the other social media platforms. So I thank everybody for coming. If you have questions or concerns, you can email us also at destinyyouthdevelopment2019@gmail.com. Please, 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 before you go, please put your email into the chat so that my administrative assistant can put it in the database, put it in our files that we have so we can contact you or you can contact us. So please put your email, your phone number, whatever your contact information is so we can stay in contact with you guys. And if nobody else has any questions, we are going to end. All right. So thank you, Natasha. I will keep in touch with you. All right. And
Thank you. Thank you for
All
having
righty.
me.
Natasha.
Thank you.
so thank you, everybody. Thank you for putting your email in the chat. All right, Tisha and Isha, I'll see you guys later.
See you.